Okay, so without further ado, we'll jump in. So as I mentioned, today's webinar is going to be hosted by myself. So I'm Cameron. If you've not seen me before, it means you've probably not been on one of our webinars because I've on probably 70% of them. And then also my colleague Chris.
Good afternoon.
So Chris is one of our senior business development managers. So Chris is heavily involved in LED projects, especially even we'll go into some detail on some of the special and bespoke stuff we do. Chris even surprises me quite frequently where I walk past his desk and there's stacks of something that I didn't even know we could make that he's working on. So I think Chris is the perfect person to be joining me on this so that we can work through the potentials for LED, any potential pitfalls, things to be aware of, and what you need to know in order to sell it. One thing that we are going to be putting a focus on here is this is going to be a two-part webinar. So today's webinar is going to talk about the commercials, a general overview of our products, our offering, and also a little bit about LED technology and what you need to know in terms of quoting it and how you can potentially drum up some business in this area. But then also next month, towards the end of it, we'll have a slide on the specific dates. We're going to be doing quite an ambitious webinar, and that is going to be doing mostly live a complete indoor LED install. So that's going to mean that today you'll learn the commercials and the general overview of our product lines, and then next month you'll get an overview of how it all goes together. Whether you plan on installing it yourselves or not, it's going to give you an overview of how this solution kind of comes together. With that, I'll pass over to Chris if you want to.
Yeah, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for jumping on this edition of our August webinar. It's nice to have you all on here. For many existing customers of also, you would have seen over the years that our sort of growth is just not limited as to expansion in LCD technology, to which we've got quite an extensive range, but also LED. And over the last sort of 5 years, we've brought in a modular range of LED technologies, which are pretty much designed to suit any application. So whether this be an outdoor, an indoor offering, or any form of sort of bespoke, as Cameron touched on briefly in the introduction. So just as a bit of an overview to anybody that's not 100% familiar into our modular LED ranges. If we just look at the first two here, our base of indoor options are our P1.8 and our P2.5. But we've also got two different technologies that can be associated with. And the most standard that everybody may know is what's called SMD, where we have just the pixels on the board, nice and simple. And then we also have GOB, which stands for glue on board, which acts as a protective resin against potential impact and so forth. But it's important to note that this is a new product that we've only just launched since our last LED webinar. And we've seen fantastic growth in this particular area because it's opened up many new applications for deployment, where we're a lot more sort of public facing. Also, we have our high brightness LED. So again, this can be used as a main indoor display, but primarily as a window display as an alternative to an LCD solution, because you're able to basically build bigger size of displays, but also at the same time keep it seamless. We also have obviously our outdoor solutions, which have been a staple of our LED range since I believe 2019, so quite a long time ago. And we've seen a huge increase in growth, in particular the outdoor market, not just for outdoor advertising on side of walls, but also roadside, which is in stadia. It's really grown exponentially over the last sort of few years, sort of following the COVID period. And then something else that's new here is our indoor transparent DV LED. Now, this is perfect for, say, for retail environments because of its high transparency. You're not blocking any light, but it also gives the option to create really immersive LED solutions across a wide, area, whether that be retail, whether it be sort of car showrooms. And we'll touch on some of the applications in the coming slides. So that's just a bit of a brief overview in terms of our modular, and Cameron will look more towards our other options here.
Additionally, do you want to just quickly talk as well, Chris, on some of the more bespoke stuff that you've done with the curved and elements like that?
Yeah, I touched briefly on bespoke, and that's something over particularly the last 2 years we've been really able to focus on. A lot of our existing customers will understand that we do a lot of bespoke LCD. However, LED has been something out of reach. And this is an example here of an 8-meter curved LED display. which is features an SMD solution, but uniquely to this, as I say, it's curved. So we're able to create both convex and concave curves to meet a particular wall environment. It doesn't necessarily have to be flat. And this is the first of many that will be rolled out throughout the UK in the coming years. But this is an example of just something that we can do, outside of our sort of standard product line.
Exactly. So thanks, Chris. And one thing I'll step into as well, like Chris said, is our all-in-one solutions. So for any of you that have joined previous LED webinars, a lot of which I've hosted, a big push that Allsea has made over the past few years, and as the time and our market position has grown, has been taking LED from the black box that it once was, where it was, oh, you need an absolute expert to put this all together. There's loads of complexity. This is really hard to do, into making it something simple that regardless of your industry you can step into. It doesn't need to be that you're an AV integrator. There are certainly benefits to having that experience and expertise, but you can be a sign company, a marketing agency, various other shop fitters, other elements can now take products like LED and put it in with the backing of Allsea and with our explanations, so that you don't have to see this as it's incredibly complicated. It can be incredibly straightforward. And one thing that we've done here is with our all-in-one solutions, for some we've gone custom and made an entire product, but for others we have just taken what is effectively our modular solution and framed it for you as for your customers. So you have brochures and associated marketing which takes LED, it's a tool. Largely it can be used as a product, but it's largely a tool to solve a problem for a customer, and it forms that into a fully fledged product. So that's taking things like, here you've got the GOB indoor freestanding totems. They're the ones that are flanking us on the camera. So that's a resin coated. So for exhibitions and hospitality use or public use, they're great because they have that resin coating to protect from damage. But as individual totems, you can just wheel them into place, put them in a flight case, take them to a show, take 5 of them to a show, clip them together, and they become one seamless display. Like you're seeing in that picture at the top, that's actually 3 totems together. So you can produce a larger display and actually create a backdrop to an entire stand. Additionally, talking about the totems, you've got this second one here is high brightness LED placed onto the totem. So this example was in a shopping center where the shop was not open yet, and they wanted to, rather than just having your typical hoarding which has some standard messaging, they wanted to do video and share that space amongst both the brand that was coming and the shopping center. So they could show benefit as they were moving into the shopping center. They could show benefit to the center of, look, we're willing to kind of co-market and cohabitate with you as well. All-in-one window displays. Now that's something where, like Chris said, you can go for any size. It is our modular LED put into a window in a high brightness format, but we've put together a few solutions where you can go, right, give a customer an idea and then change the size later. It can be, okay, you want a 157 inch roughly. Well, here's how much that's going to cost you. Great, that's within your budget. It's not exactly the size you want. Well, we'll tweak it a little bit. It's a modular solution. We'll tweak it as we need. Here's the slightly adjusted price, but this is to exactly what your needs are. But you can start that conversation by saying, okay, here's a rough idea. Here's what we can do for you. Is this within what you're looking at? Great. Now let's expand upon it and make it a little bit more bespoke to your needs. Looking also at outdoor shop fascia. Again, that's outdoor LED put into the framework of a specific product. So that's taking what is your traditional shop sign and converting it to a more impactful LED version. Now, this is specifically aimed at the outdoor use, but one common use that you'll see in the market is in WH Smith's across airports across the world. They have taken LED and they were one of the first to run with replacing their entire sign with LED and being one of the most impactful in that space by doing so. So it's just a way that you can breathe extra life into that and capture the attention of those that are at street level before they even come into the business. Digital signage we've seen used in ultra high brightness and other elements to draw people in. That is the moneymaker. You draw more people in, that pays for the digital signage indoors. This is just the elements that can help generate extra footfall. Then you've also got LED video walls, so the fine pitch video walls, where they're a standard resolution, full HD, in set sizes, and you can just have that delivered on a pallet, put into place, and you've got that all-in-one solution. And then also more on the totem, so transparent LED totems where you're able to allow light to come into the building whilst also still advertising. So that's something that's heavily utilized in Europe as well, just for allowing that light to pass through, but also utilizing that advertising space. So just to showcase a few of these, that LED that we talked about, this one was actually 5 LED totems wide, but you can see it's completely seamless. Once you join them together, the distance between the totems is the same as the distance between the LEDs, so it becomes one large display. Shot fascia, again, you can see the impact of that. It's bright, it's changeable, it can be animated. Of course, that would be tweaked depending on whether it's road facing, but it can be animated and tweaked. You've also got this totem here used in more of a retail circumstance where you can fill it in the window. And what retail tend to like about this is it's maneuverable. So you can move it out the window, re-merchandise, clean the window, put it back into the window without having a fixed structure in place. With that, we are going to move over to a little bit more about the technology and just a general overview of the LED. Now, one thing I will say that I may have not fully mentioned at the start is we want to make this a little bit more collaborated as a webinar. So if you do have questions, you don't entirely have to wait to the end. If you feel like you have a question specifically about this topic, feel free to unmute your microphone and just ask it. You know, we want to learn to help you to develop your knowledge and grow with us in this LED space. So these slides in particular are about pixel pitch. So LED, for anyone who's new to LED, it's thought of in a slightly different way because it's very modular. When you look at an LCD display, commonly you're looking at a resolution of 1920 pixels, 1080 pixels high, and that creates your overall display. But it's pretty fixed. You know, the standards that you see is 1920 by 1080, like I said, and 3840 by 2160, commonly referred to as 4K. But usually you're talking about the totals because you can't really break it down from there very much. You know, yes, for bespoke, we can go custom with the shapes and sizes, but on site, you're not going to take a hacksaw to it and cut it in half and have half an LCD panel. You're going to have liquid crystal everywhere. With LED, you think about it in a slightly more modular approach where you look at the distance between the individual LEDs as a pitch. For anyone coming from the print industry, you'll be familiar with dot pitch. It's the same logic. You have a higher pitch, a lower pitch means a shorter distance between LEDs, means we're packing more LEDs into the space and producing a crisper image. And then if you have less LEDs, then that's going to pack less LEDs into the space, produce a lower cost, but also by having larger LEDs, you can potentially go a little bit brighter as well. So there's a little bit of balance to be had there. Now, talking about pixel pitch, the great rule of thumb, and that's what this graphic's here for, is when you look at LED, you've got, for instance, for our stock products, you've got P1.8, so that's 1.8 millimeters between the LEDs, and P2.5, 2.5 millimeter, for outdoor 4 and 6. Now, the general rule of thumb is however far away from it in meters is what you want in pitch. So if your viewers are going to be 6 meters away from it, P6 is ideal. If they're going to get close to it, they're going to be like 2 meters, P1.8 is going to be ideal. And that's going to be a general rule of thumb, but you also need to consider the content. So yes, people who are 4 meters away, P4 might be ideal, but do you want to put a lot of text on it? Is it for a corporate environment? Then potentially you might want to go for something higher like P1.8 or P2.5. So then you've got that additional angle to look at, but that's where we can come in and we can advise as well. So in talking about the pixel pitch, there's a few ways that we can assist. We can always advise just by saying, show us a picture, where do you want to put it, what do you want to put on it. We can jump on Teams calls, we can help you with that. We can help in any way that you need us to, but also you can see from our showroom, we have all the LEDs set up here. I think it's a very visual product. So if you have the capability to bring your customers or come in yourselves to come and see it in person, we've done many times where we have the outdoor on this wall and just have people walk away. And as you reach 6 meters away, you go, oh, the P6 now looks crisp. Get closer, P4 looks ideal now, and you can really get that impact. So that can be very helpful. If you're in an instance where that can't be done, maybe you're far away, we can potentially look at lending equipment and providing guides. We had one of our Scottish partners yesterday morning. I was on the phone with them, helping them put together 2 of our LED cabinets so that they could have their customer come into their workshop and see the distances and see, do I want P4, do I want P6, and actually make that decision for themselves as well. I believe there's a question that's come up in the chat, but I'm unable to see it at the moment, so I may have to come back to that in a moment when I can view the chat.
I can read that out for you if you want.
Oh, thank you.
So
yeah, if you don't mind.
Do your 5 LED totems linked together create a 1920 by 10, a 1080 by 1920 display. So basically, are 5 columns of the LED totem the equivalent of HD is the question.
It's incredibly close. It's slightly differs from that. I believe off the top of my head, I believe it's actually 6. So the wall directly behind us, I believe, is 6 by 4 cabinets, and that's almost exactly full HD. It's slightly over on one on the horizontal and slightly below on the vertical, but it scales incredibly well. So 5 totems is just below that. It's just a little bit shrunk. My colleague Chris next is going to go into a little bit about scaling and how we can deal with scaling for that. But also one thing I'll say is when you look at the spec sheets on our website for the totems, we've actually outlined in the table the resolution of each solution. So you haven't got to do any calculations. You can just look down and go, right, 5 totems, there's my resolution. So we'll make that nice and simple for you. But if afterwards you want a little bit more, then we can provide some information. Thanks, Bolly, for just clarifying on the resolution there. But we can help with scaling. And I think that's a great segue over to Chris to talk about kind of scaling and how that works.
Yeah, so this particular area was put in today's webinar because there's sometimes an element of confusion when it comes to creating the correct content in the correct size. For particularly LED. For LCD, it's easy. As Cameron mentioned, obviously, it's typically full HD or full 4K. But because LED works differently, one of the tools that we have, which is a great asset, and any of our existing customers will know, is the use of My Signage Portal. So My Signage Portal allows us to create templates, okay, of a couple of resolution sizes, to which we can then create individual zones based on a particular size. Now, typically, what we would do with LCD is just use a full screen. You know, it's either going to be landscape or it's going to be portrait. But with LED, what we actually do is we use the template to map out the full resolution of an LED display. So there's 2 examples I've put in here for you. So to the left, we've got a 1.8. It's measuring just over 2.5 by just under 1.5 meters. And then the same on the right, but using a 2.5 pixel pitch. And you'll notice the difference in both the horizontal and the vertical resolutions on those. Now, this does not mean that you have to create your content specifically using the example of a P1.8 to 1392 by 783. You can still use a full HD image. But because the physical screen is that large, okay, it will only fill that area. Okay, the remaining blue areas that you will see within the CMS actually remain black. So this is how we can create seamless walls of incredibly large sizes, either using our standard sort of 1080p template we built here, or even 4K, where you're talking really, really large walls. But it also means that, you know, your ratio for your content stays intact, and it always displays full screen. Cameron touched on briefly the screen behind us here, being just under HD. I believe the actual image that's on the screen is actually in HD. So, but it does actually fill the screen from point to point. Okay, so using My Signage Portal, which has been, you know, a fundamental part of the Audi AllSee all-in-one solution for LED and customization of size, is really powerful. The only change that you will ever make between LCD and LED is just drawing an individual box for your LED wall, and that is very, very easy. All of the processes are exactly the same. One of the abilities we do have for you is to actually pre-configure this, so you don't even need to do this yourself. If you're willing to learn that, that's you know, that we're happy to help you with that. But we can actually create these at the point of sale. So it's just a case of yourself dropping your content into a specific zone. So the one we're looking at here is indoor, but we've also got an outdoor version as well, where we're using slightly higher pixel pitches. And you'll notice that this is on a 2.88 by 1.92, so effectively a 3 by 2 configuration, that the resolutions come way down. Now, you'd think, and you'd look at that, you know, in sort of the old way that resolutions work, that might not look good at all. But importantly, this comes down to the viewing distance. You know, if we were to drop a 1080p image into the P4 box, it'd look absolutely fine. So if we're sort of 4 meters away, and the same for a P6. Okay, looks absolutely fine. But it's just important to note that the actual ability to scale these zones to any size of LED within these remits is a really powerful tool that can be done simply at the click of a button.
Excellent. I believe a question's come up. Tom, are you able to read out for us?
So it's Patrick Clark. He's asking, will that not cause distortion if the ratio of the cabinets is nowhere near 16:9?
I'd say if it's nowhere near, then a little bit of finagling is going to need to be done. But what we can do with My Signage Portal is, like Chris was saying, we can set the template that does match it. So yes, the overall canvas is, for instance, 1920 by 1080, but we can then set a media zone that exactly matches the LED. Yes, I'll say, for instance, if you've got 16:9 content and your screen is 4:3, then yes, some squishing, like physics is up against us, some squishing or some cropping is going to have to happen. But My Signage Portal can help you with that. At the same time, we've got avenues we realize for projects, you're not always going to want a CMS. Sometimes you're going to want to run, hubs are going to want to run Sky Sports or some other element that's 16:9. There's different elements of where you can letterbox it, so we can use the controllers to add some small black bars to frame it correctly and keep the aspect ratio correct, or we can zoom in and crop, or we can, even one project that we did a little while ago, they wanted to fill the space. This is going back quite a few years. They wanted to fill the space in a sports bar, so they made this LED that was like 25:9. It was nowhere near 16:9. And what we ended up doing was the center part was 16:9, perfectly formatted, but then the left and right columns were then filled by a separate media player. So they were advertising, for instance, upcoming fights in UFC, upcoming football matches, all of these elements that they could kind of advertise along the side, also drinks menus and those elements, and they were utilizing that space, but then also had it available for other use as well. Tom, I think there's also another question.
It was more of a comment from Maz. To avoid distortion, we need to create according to pixel size or resize original the best way. I think the key message really is obviously the content needs to be created at the correct resolution that matches the screen and the aspect ratio, and then everything else, you can kind of leave it to us to figure out the best way to scale that depending on the requirements.
I will say on the back of this as well, if anyone wants any specific guidance on how we've done it in the past and, has a particular use case of going, well, what would I do here and what would be the best way to do that, feel free to reach out to your account manager or one of us, and we'll happily sit through and go through it all and what we've done in the past and different ways that you can solve that problem. With that, we're going to move over to retail. So just looking a little bit more specifically into some of the industries that have utilized LED and that can utilize LED. Now, I will say that we've been surprised over the years over which industries have utilized LED, and it's involved a lot more than we had planned for, which is great. And what we found is that everyone can see an avenue for why LED can be useful. So a few projects you can see here. I'll also bring up a few videos in a moment. But it's incredibly impactful. Chris talked about window displays, but also within shop fitting, they can be placed custom. You've got these very small cabinets that can be placed together to create seamless displays. So you can see this one on the right where it can wrap around a corner and just become basically a shop header. You've got behind the tills where you can have this kind of accent wall. This one to the left for an advertising company in a shopping center. So it can kind of fit the requirements of the project. And that's the really good thing about LED is its versatility. It can be shaped and changed and modified to match the requirements of the project. One thing I love, especially for shop fitting and really creating these accent walls, is because all LED heat comes from the front, you don't have to worry about ventilation at all. In fact, we've done projects where the wall comes up to within like a millimeter of the LED. So you've basically got a seamless wall to LED transition. It basically becomes a digital part of the wall. So you can do some really impactful, real statement pieces within retail. Really good transition here to a statement piece that was done for retail using LED. So this one was actually very custom. So in working with the partner, they were used to custom fabrication. They actually custom fabricated this metal X that you can see in the center, and then we applied our modules. This is a slightly stranger use case for it, but just showing how you can be really impactful with LED, where doing something like this with LCD would have been very difficult. But with LED, it's a lot simpler because you can take it, it's very modular, and we can break it up and put it into what we need there as well. Looking more at some of the other, my button's broken. We'll switch over to this one here, where we have the high brightness version of our LED, again making up a window display. So you might have previously used one of our ultra high brightness LCD, but you wouldn't have been able to achieve the size here without putting together multiple displays. So LED allows you to fill that window space and really make something impactful that's going to draw attention into the business as well. Stepping over as well to corporate. So corporate's another area that can heavily utilize this. One story I was told a couple of years ago, which I thought was really important to note, was, I do not remember the end user business, I'm afraid, but it was a business which was placed in a prestigious building, high-rise building, incredible views from their window. They had spent tens, if not hundreds of millions on having this premises. They then put projection into their main boardroom. CEO walks in for the boardroom meeting. All the blinds are down so that they can see the projection. He said, well, why am I paying £50 million for us to be in this location if we can't even see it during our meetings? Strip it all out. I want something better. And then LED was the solution because it's bright and you can have windows open, curtains open, and still display. We did a project a couple of years ago for a high school in Rotherham, and they had a large 5 meter by 3 meter LED indoors. But the reason they went for LED over projection was they had a lot of skylights. They didn't want to cover that all up to be able to support projection. And so they had LED, and then that meant that they could just have it completely open, this bright, vibrant space that was meant to be, for education and collaboration, even with local businesses. They could have this bright, open space, but still have the display for presenting and other elements like that. Chris, do you want to take us over for hospitality?
Yeah, so one of the areas that we've seen great growth in over the last couple of years is within the hospitality and entertainment sector. There's a few examples you can see here. Obviously, we've got the curved display, as was shown earlier, also along with a window display using our high bright LED. But also to the right hand side is an example what Cameron talks about when we were looking at resolution, which included external feeds. So this is using a P4 display with a sky feed. Okay, there is an element of shrinkage because of the size of the wall, but it does mean obviously within the hospitality and entertainment industry, the requirement for LED technology is constantly growing. We're seeing a large number of inquiries relating to this. So whether it be for events, whether it be for sort of live performances, say obviously themed decor, as we can see on here, but also sporting facilities. We've seen a lot of football stadia become more interested in the procurement of this technology, but even lower divisions as well, where they wouldn't necessarily associate the budget. But because of its pure reliability, LED, as I say, is becoming more accessible, and obviously it's designed. Obviously, your return on investment does come down considerably. But obviously, we primarily see this installed in areas where you are going to get a lot of the public. Okay, so it does really make an impact, into an environment's usage.
Excellent. Do you want me to switch over? Yeah.
And we've got a couple of examples here. So this one is a restaurant where we can see that where the LED is being positioned here, if we look over the balcony, we're pretty much covering the whole of the bottom floor. Obviously, that's showing, obviously the offerings that the organization has, as well as the menu. Obviously, people there, which is always a good psychological viewing. When you see people in a happy mood in an environment, you generally feel a bit more happy yourself. But it's a really nice way that's using a technically unique shape of an LED. We've been able to fill primarily quite a large space on a wall.
Yeah, brilliant. So moving on from there, we'll take a look.
Sorry, Cam, before we carry on, just one, someone's asked a question again in the chat. By the way, guys, thanks so much for asking as we're going along. It just makes it a lot more kind of engaging and interesting. So do you have any tips on taking pictures and videos of LEDs without getting that flickering effect? So yeah, this is obviously quite common. there are a lot of variables. The main thing is matching the refresh rate, the refresh speed of the camera and the LED. Ambient lighting levels can also play a factor as well. So really, depending on whether you're using an SLR camera or a smartphone camera, it's basically just a case of playing around with the shutter speed and the FPS until you get the right result. And it can even change if you're kind of changing the angle and so forth. Yeah, Maz has kind of summarized it there on that as well. So it's just about kind of playing around with those two settings, really, the shutter speed and the FPS until you get the result that you're after. But it can be notoriously difficult to make a LED look good on photos and videos.
Yeah, I will say all the videos we're showing where there's a lot of flickering is because most of it's shot on phones. So they're just going standard settings for the phone and it's instantly picking up. One thing that you'll see quite commonly as well is modern smartphones use quite a high refresh rate. So they're picking up what our eyes aren't seeing. So it's just allowing them to pick that up as well. But like both Tom said, in terms of tweaking settings, you can tweak it and get it better aligned. But also it is worth, if you do quite a high-end project, having some professional photography done. We can help with that. We have our marketing department as well. So if you've got one that you think this would be a great one for everyone to shout about, this is a great project, please reach out to us. And if it's a substantial project, I'm sure we can look at even arranging for our marketing team to come out and take some photos for the mutual benefit of everyone involved. Just going on to education then. So education, I briefly mentioned. In fact, that one on the left picture there is the project that I mentioned in Rotherham. Absolutely outstanding display. So incredibly high resolution. In fact, the resolution of that in total became roughly 1440p, so higher than Full HD, but produced from individual modules. It's still used heavily to this day. That space is used by the Academy Trust for sixth form lessons and lectures, but they also hire out the facility for local businesses. So in the evenings and stuff, they can do their own business lectures and other elements. Anything can basically be put through that. We've got scaling enabled on that, so you can plug with a HDMI switch that was put into that project. So you can just put multiple devices, press a button, and you're away. There's also a full audio setup that was connected to it. So it just created this big display that was a better solution than projection, because as you can see in that image, loads of natural light, which would be a problem potentially for projection, or you have to go very high spec with projection to be able to potentially counteract that. But in these education spaces, there's been a few projects that have been done largely university and college level where they can utilize one for being able to deal with any environment in terms of lighting, which is fantastic for that. It's very crisp and the contrast is great, so you can have some very impactful, even film nights, for instance, if you're wanting to help the students and do student unions. But one thing that's really liked is the lower potential for damage versus LCD. So let's say there is, damage and someone does mess with it. Typically, you're damaging a module, and that module can be replaced inexpensively compared to, let's say, an LCD video wall where you might smash a whole panel, and that might be a substantial cost to replace that panel. With LED, you're just replacing individual modules and potentially repairing them. Someone in a pub throws a beer bottle at an LCD panel, that panel is gone. You need to replace that whole panel. Someone does the same with an LED, potentially it gets back here, we get it under a microscope, and we might be able to replace the individual LED diodes. So it's a far more repairable product line as well. Transport is another area where we've seen a lot of people. I mentioned earlier WH Smith, where they've really pushed for all of their stores that are in airports have gone straight to LED. It's a curved LED curving around the circumference of their store. They've actually built up lettering in front of it, but it can be very impactful in those areas. You'll see it quite commonly done in train stations, airports, where they want these kind of big impactful things and a bit of money spent. I think most retail businesses, especially, a lot of their flagships will be in airports because they're trying to draw attention on the global stage rather than just locally. And so they'll typically have flagships and do something a little bit more interesting at airports. So that's an area where this can be utilized as well. But we've even seen for our outdoor products, we've had some shipping yards and other areas where they've utilized the screens for directing traffic, or showing parking spaces and just general outdoor messaging. One project that we've had recently is quite interesting, is utilizing our hardware triggering with My Signage Portal so that you can switch content, having a few buttons in the security kiosk, press the button, content changes, press the button, content changes to the individual bay you need to send the driver to. I've kind of touched on this next subject a little bit as we've gone, but just talking a little bit about the different individual product lines and where they fit into an offering. So we're talking here about LED versus LCD versus projection. Now, LED versus LCD, there is a place for both of them, and you'll see we still produce LCD video walls. They're still going strong for us. It's not something that's going away, but there's a use case for LED and a use case for LCD. I think LCD can be incredibly useful when you need very high resolution. You put together a 2x2 video wall with LCD. That's only 98 inch if you're using 49-inch panels. Oh, sorry, 96 inch if you're using 46-inch panels, but that is going to allow you a 4K resolution off the bat. So if you're doing spreadsheets and other text-heavy use cases, LCD can still be very useful for that. But risk is high for damage. If someone damages one panel, you've got to replace one panel. It's 1/4 of the cost of your overall display. LED, the damage reduction is huge because you're only replacing that one module. Power consumption is massively dropped because when it's displaying black, it's basically not drawing power. It's very close to not drawing power because it's pretty much turned off the LEDs. The contrast is incredibly high because you're going from basically a pure black to pure white, and it's creating this incredible contrast. Like you're seeing behind me, other than the lights that are shining on it, the screen is just pure black. So it creates that incredible contrast that you've got from that, but also the modularity. The modularity is really useful in that you can go to fill the space. Whether you're going to fill that with one piece of content or multiple pieces of content, you can take a wall and fill the entire space or fill one section. We had a project a few years ago, I don't have photos of it unfortunately, where the client's logo were like signal bars of a phone. So they separated out the LED, put fascia around the LED so that it was just like you're looking through it, and that logo became a video display as well. I know some brands like Zara, the clothing brand, have done that for a long time, where their entire logo is words but made up of LED so that they could customize and put animations and such on that as well. These slides will be available after this webinar as well. So if you want any, this is a kind of a crib sheet of the pros and cons, but also durability. Our LCD durability is fantastic. You're looking at, on average, we expect around 70,000 hours before you start to see degradation. LED is even further than that. 100,000 hours we anticipate that the screen will go before you even start to see it degrade. Whereas you can see, of course, projection, the historical thing is the cost of replacing bulbs. On some high-end ones, it can be a case of, oh, I need to replace the bulb. Is it worth doing at this stage when I'm paying for this bulb, which is a substantial cost? So you've got this ongoing repairability, maintenance element. This is a big factor which has sold us into industries that we didn't anticipate. Even fast food, where they've deployed LED, because when we get rowdy customers, then at the potentially damage the screen, they can replace modules rather than entire screens as well. With that, I think,
Cameron, sorry, just before we carry on, there has been another question. What LED solution from your current range do you see becoming the most popular among AV resellers? So, just from my perspective, I think the fact that we've got so many different types of solutions in stock is really the key. I think we've got such a wide range of partners, of different resellers that sell to different sectors in different ways. You know, from very technical, AV integrators to less technical, sign makers that have it as a different part of their business. So it really depends on case by case, really. I mean, I know that the LED totems, for example, they've been very popular and are all-in-one solutions in general, kind of following the similar trend to other manufacturers as well, providing all-in-one solutions. It's a very kind of frictionless way into the technology, really. So I'd say any of our all-in-one solutions in terms of an entry-level product, but I think LED totems in particular have been quite popular, I know, just because of how versatile they are, and the advantages, like you've already mentioned, that they have over LCD in some cases. But yeah, I don't know if you want to kind of address that question from your perspective as well. So what LED solution from your current range do you see becoming the most popular among AV resellers?
I think if you're an AV, and especially it's two people, but if you're going to be looking at installing it, I will say that very quickly GOB is going to become your favorite. Is going to be your best friend, just because the risk of damage is so low and snapping it into place is so easy. So much so that over here we've got this totem. I'm just going to reach over. Fortunately, I've got a microphone here. I'll just quickly reach over and grab a module. So you imagine I've talked about the repairability and swapping out the module. GOB, especially where you've got a resin coating over the front so it's smooth, so there's no risk that I'm damaging these LEDs. By the way, an end user wouldn't be able to take that off. I've left the covers off the side that prevent you from peeling it off, just so that I could do this. But individual module with a standard connector on the center, and it's all magnetic. So you can literally take it and put it together just like a jigsaw. You just pop it into place, and it works. There's no order for where those modules go. I can take the left module off, put it down on the bottom right. It's going to work straight away. It's just really seamless, really easy thing to put together. So I think in general, there's a huge benefit to resin coating your LED, both for the install, but also for instance, retail and public use, where someone can potentially lean up against it or knock their fist against it, and it's not going to break and you're not going to have individual LEDs coming off. When it comes to SMD LED, where they're individually placed on the front, we do recommend that those are placed in positions where a kid isn't going to interact with it, because they can just sit and kind of pick at it. It's not dangerous, it's very low voltage, but annoying for your end user. So GOB, I think we've seen, especially when we did Integrated Systems Europe, we had a few partners that brought their end users up, and where they were coming from, for instance, the hospitality industry, there was some that saw it that pointed to GOB and went, we need to change everything to this, because we see damage far too frequently in screens when it's late, we're open late night and we get damage. There's a huge benefit to that as well.
Sorry, one of the.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Cameron. I thought you were finished on this slide. Apologies. We've got another question from Marco. Do you have fixed size LED with controller and everything included?
Yeah, go ahead.
Basic answer is yes. When we started promoting particularly the indoor LED to higher volumes, we looked at trying to mimic what we can currently do with LCD. And we touched on this earlier, and that's using 16:9 ratios. So we can provide basic price sets for any pixel pitch that utilizes a 16:9 ratio. So that will include the LED, it'll include the mounting solution if it's indoor. We'll also include the media player. We'll also include the LED controller. So we can, all of our LED solutions are provided as an all-in-one, but the unique part of working with particularly direct view LED is that you're not stuck to the norm. You can be free and, create unique sizes, as you would have seen a few on this presentation already. But fundamentally, yes, if you get in touch with your account manager, we can provide you a list of some basic 16:9 ratio screens.
Definitely. And also, just on that point as well, if doing the all-in-one, if the fear is about the installation and configuration, we are very happy and very eager to support you with our own engineers in doing your first few, even if this is speaking to our international customers. Our engineers have passports. They're going to hate me saying this, but we're really willing to help you build this area of your business as well in any way that we can. So whether it's the all-in-one solution or taking a more modular approach and we just put together a solution, we'll help you anyway to make it properly scalable.
We've got another.
Tom, what's another question? Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, there was another question. I'm loving all these questions coming through in real time. What is the power consumption for LED totems? How many can you run on a single 13 amp socket? What power do you need for a 5 column totem LED wall? You might not know this off the top of your head, guys, so we might need to get in touch separately about this. But yeah, that was the question.
I can answer some of it. So with our totems, we've put them together basically like individual totems. They have a plug each. They can be joined together to reduce that if necessary, if it's not possible to have a plug each. But the reason we've done that is so you could separate them out if you wanted to. One thing that's quite smart in how these are configured is that our LED totem, so one totem doesn't know that it's not 7 totems. So when you take one totem and you buy another one from us and you plug in the second totem, plug the second totem into the first, instantly your content's showing. Because as far as that first totem knows, it's part of a 7-wide display. The others just aren't plugged in yet. So we configure it all like that. So it's one of our most modular solutions in that you've got these individual totems where they can be used individually, independently. When it comes to power, then you're looking at individual sockets typically. We need to come back to you on the individual spec. The website does show it, but I don't know off the top of my head. But you're typically looking at a few hundred watts per screen. So the only issue that you potentially run into with what kind of amperage you need, you mentioned 13 amps with LED, is because you're dealing with a lot of lights. They're effectively just lights. There is an inrush current. So that is the first 50 milliseconds of power where it needs to charge the capacitors. So LED draws a massive amount of power for like 50 milliseconds, but that means that the amperage of the fuse needs to be typically a little bit higher. 13 amp is used fine, but what I say is when you're deploying quite a large LED, then we potentially need to look at going a little bit higher than 13 amp, but we can advise on a case-by-case basis, and we're happy to liaise with electricians to help do that, or bring in electricians to even just do the electrical work.
Thanks, Cameron. There is another question as well now from Patrick. Can you replace SMD modules with GLB?
You can indeed. So all of our Generation 2 LED uses exactly the same cabinet. So I could take this totem here, pull off the modules on this totem right now are actually the high brightness modules. So I can take these modules off, put a GOB module on, put a normal P2.5 that's not high brightness, and it all just swaps in, swaps out. I'd have to change the configuration a little bit because obviously the pixel pitch might change. But other than that, yeah, you can just take that cabinet. And let's say, for instance, someone bought a P2.5 standard brightness and later down the line said, I want actually high brightness, I'm going to put this in a window. We'd be able to cost up, okay, we'll replace the modules, not the cabinets. So all the backing stays the same and we just replace the modules, just the tiles. So LED, I'd say as well, is far more future-proof than any other technology because you can replace individual parts and upgrade individual parts rather than having to replace the entire product. Do you want to take this next one, Tom? Tom, do you want to read that out for us?
Yeah, sorry. Do you need more amps on boot up for a 5 totem video wall? And if so, what percentage extra power allowance is needed?
I think we might have to come back to you on that one. Yeah, if you want to follow up with ourselves or your account manager on that, we'll follow up on the specifics for what's needed there, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do that off the top of my head. Is that it for questions for now? We'll move on to the next section. Let me just jump back in here. So this next section was something we wanted to have a bit of an open conversation, to be honest, is about generating leads and how you can convert sales for LED. This would be largely an open forum. Obviously, we've got a few kind of headlines here, but we can talk to what has worked so far, but also what resources you have available to you as an All-C partner to promote those areas. So I think one thing that we wanted to touch on is going quite specific, not just in industry, but also events, football, World Cup, other elements like that, where if you get in at the right time, we have the stock. So it means we don't have to be like, oh, okay, you're going several months ahead. A lot of people leave it to the last minute.
Yeah, we generally see, particularly, say, obviously seasonal events, and as we know, obviously the women's Euros was obviously just a few months ago, and we had an influx literally days before the final for screens. I mean, it's a bit unrealistic to actually obtain them all, but one of the key things is looking at the year ahead and seeing what events, what's happening in the industry, where you can identify and say, right, I may not need to have a stand there, but just be there in presence, or at least understand what's happening over the year. Where you could, you promote, your offerings essentially. One of the biggest things that I personally try to do on every LED inquiry is actually get All-C involved in the conversation. We've gathered quite a lot of experience over the last number of years, and particularly when we're working with newer partners or ones that haven't experienced LED. You know, one of the key things that we want to do is to engage with you and your end user. It enables us to identify exactly what would be the best route forward. You know, information is key, particularly when you're dealing with this type of solution. So whether it's indoor, whether it's outdoor, whether it's window, you know, it's recommended that you do get us involved. You know, we are completely playing white label. You know, so you know, I think it really helps, and it just helps secure and give your effective end user, you know, confidence that he's choosing the right company, you know, moving forward. So, and also one of the key points here, focus on the customer goals. I think this is a very basic in any, you know, sort of sales approach, is understanding the need, understanding the requirement. What's the current problem? Yes, there's fantastic tech, but unless you're able to, you know, identify very quickly what they're actually looking to achieve, you can be, you know, we've probably done this. I've done it myself. Obviously, Cameron's done it himself, you know, where you're just going backwards and forwards with information and there's no real output. You know, I think that initial conversation, you know, obtaining what's important to the client and why it's important is really key for LED, because you can go right from very basic to extremely complex. And if you're missing, you know, an incumbent part of that, you know, it does, you know, potentially delay or even cease a project from happening. I mean, touching on the marketing side, those who've been with Allsy for many years, we should hope there's a number on the call, will know that obviously one of the things that we've done historically is provide quite extensive marketing materials packs, you know, and these are purely designed to help you grow your business, you know. And through the use of specification sheets, customizable brochures, imagery, video, you know, you can utilize those resources to really create a strong website. You know, we've seen a lot of our partners develop over the last number of years where they might just focus on one particular sector and have a really nice presentation for a range of products. Some of them may just focus on LED, you know, and actually show projects that they've worked on, maybe as subcontractors or through other parties. But it, you know, creating a strong website presence, I think, is definitely key. And obviously, at the bottom, we see utilize Allsy's marketing team. As I've just said, we are white label, so we're very willing to help, whether it be from a mock-up perspective, whether it be from a brochure creation perspective, whether it be website reviews. You know, we're able to do everything as you know, as a complete package with one goal, and that's to ensure that you can grow your own business, because fundamentally, why you're in business, you know. So it's you know, it's key to have those drivers in place. And then coming on to promoting these solutions, I just touched on website. Listing product is key. You know, we notice we don't touch on price there, but listing product, because that's, you know, attainable for a customer. You know, they want to be able to see what offerings you have, what differentiates you from company next door. You know, and obviously contacting your customers. You know, this is in any environment where you're looking to, you know, obtain business, you know, whether it be telephone, whether it be mail shots, you know, physical brochure handout, door knocking, you know, the ability to, you know, contact your customers and also maintain regular contact is key, you know, because you're there not just to make a sale, you're there to build a relationship, which is the one of the fundamentals as to what Allsy is built on. You know, and touching on the point previously, when you're contacting your customers, you say you can use us as a resource, you know, for conversation development as well. And if you do all that right, you start making sales. So as we see the equation at the end there. But I say fundamentally, you know, sort of lean in on Allsy as a support net more than anything else. It will definitely help you grow. And we have historical success stories of organizations over the years that have done that. Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, all I was just going to say, I think, to be fair, you've kind of covered it off, but in terms of talking to your customers, if you've got an avenue of going, oh, okay, I've got this customer base that I want to approach about this particular thing, but I don't know how I can do it in like a really nice way, you know, graphically or anything, reach out to our team. Our marketing team are heavily underutilized for these things, where we can put together customized email shots for you. We can help you put together flyers and go really specific and help you with your targeted advertising, because ultimately it helps us. You know, we want to help you and enable you to grow your business into LED or grow the LED sales that you've already done. So please lean on us. That can expand even beyond marketing to your account managers and your account managers coming out to meetings. You can bring in your customers in for meetings, us coming out and doing demos. You know, we can really help sell them on the solution that is LED. Before we move over to the Q&A, one thing that we do want to mention, at the start of this webinar, we mentioned that it was going to be a two-part webinar. Oh, sorry.
Click that on too, back.
Yeah. So just talking about the next webinar, which I think hopefully will be as engaging as this one. We've had a great turnout, and I'm really happy with how many people have asked questions. But the plan for the next webinar is it's going to be less us just talking with you, talking at you, and more us going through the physical hardware. So the plan is we're going to be putting together a structure and actually going from sheet of wood to small LED solution of indoor put together and working by the end of the webinar. Do anticipate it might run over a little bit, but that'll be with the intention of you asking questions along the way. We'll have a few cameras put together so you can see and say, why are you doing it like this? Why are you using these fixings? Why are you screwing this to this? Why are you using that tool? And we can really educate you. And I think that's useful, not just if you're going to install it yourselves, but also just to understand how the solution goes together and just get your head around it, because ultimately LED actually has fewer parts to it than LCD. It just appears, because of its history, to be a more complicated solution, but it isn't.
Yeah, and just one more thing, actually. This is exclusively to our attendees today. Unfortunately, I don't have a drum roll, so but essentially, you lucky people that are on the call, excluding the All-C team, you actually have the opportunity and first access to some special pricing that we're going to be bringing in. Primarily, I believe it's to our 2.5.
Yes, that's 2.5, our first generation 2.5. So still brand new product. But what we're doing is, I mentioned the one that I just showed there where we pulled it off, and that's our generation 2 where there are no cables associated. Our generation 1, we're putting together a promo to get people to utilize that product. I think people jump straight into using generation 2 without really needing to. There's benefits to it, but once it's actually installed, pretty much the same. You're having exactly the same experience of that product. So we're doing a promotion of the price of that. Again, as I say, brand new product still in our warehouse. We have plenty of stock of that. But we're going to be promoting the Generation 1 P2.5 indoor product as well. So we'll be sending that out. Just announcing to you, but we'll be making you aware of that as well. So please feel free to reach out to your account managers about that, and we can provide that pricing as well. With that, we'll move over to Q&A. I know we've been having questions along the way, but if anyone's been saving their questions to the end, please feel free to ask now. If you want to unmute your mic or pop it in the chat, feel free.
There've been a couple more questions on the chat, and as Cameron said, guys, feel free to unmute your mic, interrupt me, or just put it in the chat. So Mark asked, Bolly's already addressed this on the chat, but Mark asked, are the panels front serviceable only?
So go for it.
Yeah, so in terms of serviceability, typically with indoor LED, that's where you will find they are front serviceable, because typically you will have either a tool, whether it be a suction tool, whether it be a magnetic tool, dependent on the type of LED. But outdoor works a bit differently. Outdoor is both front and rear. And you can see examples of this, actually, when you're driving up and down the motorway, or you might be at a stadia, you will typically see, like a big chunky steel frame that may be exposed at the rear. That will enable access to, cabling, power boards, receivers, etc. But also at the front, should it be enclosed in, you've also got tools, typically Allen key tools, that you can use to unlock and take the modules off. So for just to generalize, so indoor is typically front face, and then outdoor is typically both front and rear.
Thanks, Chris. Another question from Alan. What about the software and security? I saw some walls closed with devices like Flipper Zero.
So one thing that's really important to note with My Signage Portal especially is the fact that we cache content, so it's not a live constant stream. We also have very specific remote controls. They're all based around All-C, so any attack would have to be very targeted, especially when it comes to My Signage Portal. In 11 years of service, we've never had a single breach. So I can't imagine much of a scenario of how a Flipper Zero could be utilized to overtake something like that. But security is a huge focus for us. So my signage report, as I say, no breaches in 11 years, and we're all based on AWS's security. So it's all hosted on AWS servers. But also we do annual penetration testing to help prevent or any form of breach. We're also having future plans to move things across to later versions of Android. So LED especially, we tend to use our external media players because it's not got Android built in because it's modular. There we're starting at Android 10, so that's going to help with your security. Our future plans for everything is, as mentioned on our previous webinar, everything's moving across to Android 14. So that's going to increase security even beyond what we have there. But if you have customers or yourself that have specific security concerns, please feel free to bring them to us and we can help address them on an individual basis. But in general, what we could say is, of the 11 years that we've been doing it, we've never had a breach, and we continue to put we're not resting on our laurels there. We're continually improving our security and upgrading our security so that will be the case for forever is the plan.
Thanks, Cameron. A few more questions coming through. So, Cameron, if you could just switch to the next slide for just a second. The question's been asked, do we need to be an existing customers for us to access your marketing assets? So you can get in touch with us.
Which slide are we talking about?
The thank you slide.
Oh, sorry.
So you can get in touch with us on these details here if you're not an existing partner of ours, and we can obviously set you up and send you any marketing assets you might need, and as Cameron said, even kind of bespoke stuff if necessary. So yeah, feel free to get in touch there. Rob has asked, how is the All-C DB LED behaving in broadcast studio environments? I know there's a lot of LED brands struggling with that due to the frequency which you notice on TV.
So when it comes to that, we can produce specific LED. So if you have specific requirements for broadcast environments, then it's worth talking to your account manager. And like I said, with Chris doing his projects for the very bespoke stuff that we do at factory level, there are some slightly more specific requirements when it comes to broadcast and those elements. So if you talk to your account manager, we can go a little bit bespoke and kind of bring solutions to the table for those potential problems. So yes, you can utilize, for instance, 1.8 for some of these elements, but if you're really focusing on, if they want to use it for backdrops for filming and stuff, then we'll likely use a different range that we can make to order that would be specifically focused on broadcast ready.
Brilliant. Yeah, a couple more coming through still. So yeah, great engagement. This is by far the best engagement we've had on any webinar. So thanks, guys, for the questions. Marco asks, do brackets come with the LED or is it custom built?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So with our current generation of indoor LED, we do actually provide a mounting rail included in the pack. So they come in either a 1.2 or a 1.8 meter run. So the simple effect being is that you can obviously place this rail on a wall, and then the LED module, the first cabinet, will actually hook on, and then you can obviously daisy chain down. But they are included free of charge in the packs. When it comes to outdoor, it depends because the mounting environments generally are different. So whether they're on a wall, whether they're on a pre-existing or a new to be built freestanding structure, that would be as per the project desires. But generally for indoor, yes, we will provide the mounting rail.
And then for the outdoor as well, obviously the Unistrut being the common use as well. So we can really assist with that. You'll also see from the indoor mounting, that'll be a significant part of next month's webinar. You'll see how that all gets put onto a structure and how the cabinets then connect to that as well.
Brilliant. A few more questions.
Yeah.
Is outdoor GLB on its way? That's from Andrew.
Yeah, I'd say particularly. I mean, there's a lot of stats online at the moment about the out-of-home industry, not just domestically here in the UK, but also globally. There's a huge increase in, particularly roadside advertising. And you may have seen yourself in your local area if you travel around the UK, the amount of pure large-scale LED displays there with advertising content on has grown exponentially. It's a market worth billions, and there's billions being added every year. So it's outdoor LED is definitely a fantastic solution. And very strong space to be involved in.
Yeah, I think when it comes to outdoor, specifically GOB, there's a few physics problems that need to be solved in terms of heat dissipation and other elements. There's a few ways that have been solved in the past for things like, it's not specifically GOB, but pitch side and stuff, but where the pixel pitch tends to be a little bit higher and it's slightly different technology. Is it in the future? I'd say definitely yes, but I think there's a few things to be solved in that area as well. But I think there are other avenues for how that can be dealt with in terms of additional structures, glass, and other elements that can be brought into it as well. But I think it's definitely in the future.
Thanks, Cam. The next question's from Peter. Do you plan to have any SMD, GLB, or CLB modules that can be rotated on the cabinet without colour phase, as most modules are installed in a fixed rotation?
Yeah, at this moment in time, the cabinets are based on landscape orientation, and that is purely designed on the layout of the individual LEDs, obviously the RGB. You can, in some situations, we don't really heavily wish to do this, where you can rotate them around, but at certain viewing angles you will have too much blue, too much green, etc. There isn't really something at the moment for portraits that we're specifically looking at, but a lot of the time when we've had sort of portrait displays, we can actually make them out of our landscape. You might be maybe 10-20 mil difference in terms of the size, but we generally try to keep it as close to landscape, and it also depends on the physical size as well. I mean, so if you're more of a square LED solution where maybe it's a meter by meter and that's specific, obviously using the current size of cab wouldn't work, but we do have options where we can meet that exactly. So, but they would be in the same orientation.
I will say as well, just to add on that, and I'd mention this for LCD as well, depending on the size and scope of the project, we are a manufacturer and we can go completely just bespoke. We mentioned in one of the previous webinars what we put together for Morrison's, where that was completely bespoke cabinets, bespoke everything to exactly what the demand was for the project. So please don't think, oh, Allseas only got this and we can only do this. If it's a screen, if it's LED, LCD, whatever you need, please do still ask us, because there's often an avenue for how we can solve that, regardless whether it's an existing product or not.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. There's another question from Mark. Is there a tolerance for dead LEDs on a new installation?
Yeah, I mean, if we're involved in the installation, zero, effectively. What we do as part of every LED package is we will provide spare modules. And to add on that, as I say, if we are involved in the install, we will actually bring additionals. So we can 100% guarantee that once the install is completed, signed off, there'll be 0 dead pixels. Inevitably, due to its nature, you may have a couple that are not working at point of install. However, because they're hot swappable, it's a very easy fix. So, it's literally 0 is the tolerance.
Yeah, pretty much. I think one thing we do really want to push for is, if you're new to LED, even if you feel confident installing, especially after our next webinar, we do still recommend have one of our engineers join for a very small cost, or potentially, we can support you. Have our engineer join for the first installation, give us a bit of guidance, and also so that we can take a bit of blame if anything gets damaged. It can be potentially on us, and we can help you with that. So we really do advise, for your first one, get our help.
Brilliant. I think that's pretty much it from the questions, guys. We do have a lot of people kind of saying thank you and expressing how useful they found the session. So yeah, really appreciate that feedback, everyone. And like I say, thanks for everyone for inputting and asking questions as we've been going. It's made it a lot more engaging and interesting from my perspective anyway.
Thank you for everyone for joining.
Yeah, no, thank you everybody. It's been slightly longer the webinar than what we're used to, but it's been great to have some input from the viewers, which is always good to see. But no, thank you everybody for joining this episode of the webinar, and obviously see us on part 2.
Yeah, brilliant. Save the date.
Thank you.